Very
Happy New
nice
Year
to
to you
meet. Very
too.
nice to meet you.
It's a pleasure. The pleasure's all mine, Dale.
And what a day! What a day! Welcome to the markets 2016. What do you think, Paul? I mean, this kind of action that we're getting today, could it be a precursor for what kind of year is ahead in
I think you're
2016?
absolutely. I think you're absolutely spot on, Des. I think that it was nice of the markets to put in such an eventful start to the year just for our conversation this afternoon. So yeah, I think I actually personally think it's a real sign of what this year is going to be like for us.
Okay, so I know there are a lot of people that really pay attention to the first 5 days of the year, that they stretch it out, and each day equals, I don't know, a month or a quarter, and a lot of people put a lot of merit into the first week of the year for giving directionality for the remainder of the year. So interesting start, and talking about interesting starts, Paul, you had an interesting start. You went from the Royal Air Force to Citi right before the dot-com bust. You want to tell our audience and our community about the beginnings of your journey into
Sure.
the trading industry?
Sure. I was an officer in the Royal Air Force, and in the 90s, and I was what's known as a fighter controller, a battle manager, and it turned out that during the 90s, a couple of banks and agencies were looking to try and take guys doing my job in the military and move them across to being traders in the city. And what had actually happened is that it turns out they have a lot of very similar skill sets. And during here in the UK, we had a thing called the Battle of Britain in 1940, and it turned out that a lot of the wartime fighter controllers had been peacetime stockbrokers in the city. So
Interesting. Do you know Nicola Duke from
I
Twitter?
do,
All
I
right,
do.
because Nicola told the same story, that she was an air traffic controller, I believe, for the Royal Air Force, and
That's correct.
she noticed that they were recruiting controllers because that they had the same type of skill set for trading. What I said to her was, as a controller, though, you didn't want the lines to intersect like you do as a trader.
Well, that's the difference between an air traffic controller and a fighter controller. The air traffic
Okay.
controllers are pushing tin around, and the last thing they want to do is to collide with anybody else.
Yeah, right.
Whereas a fighter controller, it's my job to make it collide with the bad guy. So
Okay. So you're
that's
helping with the targeting of
exactly.
the fighters. Okay.
Exactly.
So
So pulling the trigger was never a problem for me.
so I want to talk. Maybe we'll talk a little geo after we talk a little bit about the markets, Paul. I
Exactly.
I noticed that you integrated into your work one of the more important views that you take before you do any kind of trading is a telescopic view, and that the weeklies are significant to you. That you come into the week with a weekly bias, and most likely trade with your weekly bias on shorter time frames. Am I reading that
Yeah,
correctly?
absolutely. These days the way I operate, the weekly chart is let's say my go-to chart, and I've traded pretty much all the way across the spectrum from 1 minute charts up to monthly charts. And when I worked for a fund, I was a very active intraday trader, trading like 1 minute, 5 minute, 10, 15 minutes charts, and I was fortunate enough to be successful at that, but it really doing that for a fund, what I tell people is that you want to be careful what you wish for, and that they think that doing it professionally for a fund is the panacea, but actually you really do
It's a
work your
lot. It's a
backside
lot
off
of
for it.
pressure. It's a lot of
It is.
pressure.
It
Yeah.
is. Yeah,
But in
indeed.
fact, I love your weekly theory because I know a lot of brokers won't like me to say this, but I believe less is more. Like, I'm looking to do something later in the week should the dollar continue to strengthen. So, I guess I could trade it into that time frame, but I'd rather wait for my inflection points. And you had to learn how to be patient, didn't you? Uh, to
Absolutely.
after you moved away from seeing a pattern every 10, 15 minutes on your shorter term time frame. So maybe this is a good time for you to share your screen with us. If you go to the upper left
Sure.
hand corner,
Sure.
uh,
Let's see what we've got here. Let's see what
yeah,
we
you
can
have a
bring up
green
here.
box with an arrow.
And see is there. Now let's see if I can bring up.
You click that box and it'll show one of your desktops, and then you click start.
I'm on the. Let's see. I'm on the laptop today, so let's see if we can. I've got some of the charts on here. I'm hoping.
There we go.
Can you see that? Can you see
Yeah, it
that,
looks
Dale?
like my chart. Right now it looks like, let me go to your, it still looks like it's showing mine.
Okay.
My
Let's
Aussie
just
weekly.
well, let's have a look at that. Let's see if I can change that then. I have got
Yeah, I
my
think it,
let's see. Let's share that. The wonders of technology, hey.
Mauricio Carrillo dragged me kicking and screaming into the 21st century. I used to update my charts by hand, Paul. So
Hey,
that's
there's
how old school. That's how old school I am. Okay,
I
we're
actually think
looking at your
I think there's a
screen here.
huge benefit to that. I actually think there's a huge benefit to actually sitting down and drawing out a chart and writing out. I think there's a huge kinesthetic quality to actually sitting down and doing that. I suspect that's probably what helped make you the trader you are today, Dale.
I believe NLP specialists believe that when you write something down, it imprints on you much more than if you just go to a screen and you look at a number and you don't write it down. It doesn't. You'll miss that number unless you write it down.
I agree, and when I first started, like and FX, I mean, I started equities in the late '90s, but FX was about 2002, 2003. What I used to do was I would print off in the morning, very first thing, I would print off the, let's say, the 15-minute chart of the cable or the euro, and physically draw in what my plan was for the day. And then at the end of the day, I would review, how the market had reacted compared to what my initial plan had been. And I found doing that, immensely helpful in getting me a lot sharper and a lot clearer in terms of actually getting in tune with the market. So maybe they're onto
So
something.
another important part of your process was journaling.
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm very big on that. Whether it be I'm anybody who knows me or works with me, I'm hugely sort of a big emphasis on recording and reviewing of trades. I think I think that might be something that's come with me from the Air Force in terms of you're always looking to debrief your performance after every mission or after every day, and it's that constant debriefing that helps you raise your performance, and it's something you work at, and that never leaves you. That absolutely never leaves you. It's I think it's genuinely massively important in terms of helping someone improve their own performance.
So trading is a good analog for the battlefield, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is. I think I genuinely would believe that. I genuinely believe that I
Only
don't.
you can't see the bogeys in FX, the black boxes. You can't see them. You almost have to imagine where they're going to come in or where they're going to push a market to. Therefore, my handle Forex Stop Hunter. So when I look at a chart, part of my process is, okay, if people are long, where are their sell stops? If people are short, where are their buy stops? And where's the market going to go to take out as many participants as possible before the move they're looking for occurs, then most likely without them.
You're absolutely spot on, Dale. There. I would I remember one of the things that one of my old mentors stuck with me was a case of, if you don't know where a market's going, just look at the chart and think, where would this market have to go to cause the most people the most pain, because that's where it'll end up going. And he's spot on. The guy was spot on, and I'd still stand by that.
Okay, so what are we looking at here? So here's your in red. You have I assume that's negative,
Sure.
red is bearish, blue is bullish, or at least showing relative strength. Why don't you give us an explanation of
Absolutely.
what you're looking at here?
This is just a quick insight into a dashboard that I created, very, very simple, and it really covers let's say the kind of the sort of think of it as the major eight of the major 28 crosses that cover those, and it's a thing that I worked on developing myself, and I call it the STAM, and it simply stands for strength, trend, and momentum. Because with looking at the weekly chart, the way I look at it is that I'm always looking to try and sort of surf the biggest wave. And that's why when a trend really takes hold on the weekly chart, that big wave is there to be surfed for what could be anywhere between 3 weeks to 3 months to a whole year, depending upon the momentum behind it. So I develop a very simple dashboard, and if I was to break it down to the simplest principle, is that within FX markets, I'm always looking to buy strength and sell weakness. Simple as that. So on a weekly basis, I'm looking at which are the strong currencies, which are the weak currencies, and I basically want to hone in on them and effectively, as I say, just trade strength, trend, and momentum. So I still do it by hand because as we talked on earlier, it actually there's a real kind of quality to actually sitting down and having to go through every one of the charts and do it by hand and sharpen your instinct. But what this has been telling me, and maybe I'll switch across to a couple of other charts, is that, or what I've
You're a
noticed from
mind
this.
reader. You're a mind reader
Yeah,
because I was going to get to that. A weekly trend in the dollar, weekly trend in euro has stalled out. The uptrend in the dollar, the downtrend in the euro. I'm sure people are still saying the dollar's in an uptrend. It could correct quite a bit and still be in an uptrend, and vice versa for euro. It could advance quite a bit, and even 120 could be considered a bear market rally. So I'm curious how you're diagnosing weekly trends there.
exactly. What I'm saying from today, and this is actually a very this is like almost like it's the first trading day of the year, so it's an interesting time for us to chat. Is that I know on the first trading day of the year, I know that there will be somewhere like 3 to 6 dominant trends this year. Okay, I know that just from experience, from having done this for years, there will be 3 to 6 dominant trends throughout the year. The question is, I don't know where they're going to come and when they're going to come really, and so it's just my job to just basically put myself in a position to be open to whatever the market offers to me. So
Why
when I've
don't
been
why don't
looking
we
at
start? Why don't we start before we try and project? What were the 3 to 6 most dominant trends in 2015 in your work? Obviously, a bull market in the dollar, bear market in
exactly.
euro.
Yeah, there was
What else?
basically I was looking at effectively the big play last year for whole of 2015 was dollar strength. That was across the board.
Okay.
Then the next themes that I was interested in was that we had weakness in the commodity currency. So Canadian dollar, Aussie dollar, Kiwi dollar, they got battered for the better part of last year, and certainly ending the year, the Canadian dollar linked to oil was just getting sliced and diced, and effectively that as I said, all I'm looking to do is to buy strength and sell weakness. So that's what I was doing. The other trend that I availed myself of, and which is a little bit outside the remit of this, is that the emerging market currencies. They're trading them against the dollar, so trading dollar ruble, dollar Brazilian real, dollar Turkish lira, dollar South African rand. They were very, very easy trends, and I would tell anybody to have a little look at them on the weekly chart, because they were just beautiful trends for most of last year, and it was just a case of as I say, get on board and try and surf that biggest wave. So so
Do you
I'd say
think
those.
that any of these, because of a lot of the pressure to their economies, besides being commodity currencies and natural resource exporters, is also being pegged to the dollar, that any of these emerging market economies, we saw a deep peg out of I don't know, Azerbaijan, and you think any of these other emerging market currencies might be tempted to depeg from the dollar, and could that change the dynamic?
I mean, it's a great question, and I'd be happy to admit that it would be probably beyond my remit and knowledge in terms of, let's say, those kind of real minor currencies and the way they, the way they may or may not be pegged against the dollar. Certainly, what I
Okay.
have noticed over the last couple of years is, of course, that the Chinese yuan, okay, it has
Yes.
just, when I started looking at FX markets, it just, overnight trading action in FX markets just was little or nothing. Chinese yuan, nobody even bothered looking at it. And over the last couple of years, that has started, it has started to become a major player, and that I think that trend is only going to continue. Okay, and I think that's going
Okay,
to
so
it's
maybe
going
you're giving us a preview of one of the themes for this year is going to be
yeah,
going into the end of the year, the last quarter or so, the yuan began to devalue. It created a lot of volatility and fear in the markets.
it,
Um,
it
could
did
this
indeed.
be could this be one of the big themes? Is continued devaluation of the yuan against the dollar, sending shockwaves into markets?
Yeah, I think that will continue, and I suppose maybe the people viewing don't have much experience of trading one, but I suppose that it's about thinking about the kind of the knock-on effects of that, and the thing that I have started to see in my own kind of, as I said, my own weekly analysis is that certainly over the last couple of weeks, what we've started to see is yen strength has come into the market,
Yeah.
okay, and you can actually see that today. Even if you look at today, a lot of the yen pairs, showed some real strength. And maybe we'll have a look at a little chart or something. We
I'm
have seen,
curious. I'm curious now that you bring up the yen. Something I pointed out to our community is on the weekly yen chart, and I believe, oh, exactly, you're showing it. The dollar index continued to make new highs without U.S. dollar yen being able to do the same for months on end. And to
exactly.
me, we started thinking that this was a potential head and shoulders top formation.
Yep.
What's your view on the yen? It looks
Uh,
like
uh,
116 is going to be major, major, major.
I would agree entirely with that. I think yen strength has started to creep in across the board, and so as I said, I'm always looking to buy strength, sell weakness. So that's what I've seen, and maybe that is a knock-on effect of the of invariably the as we've seen ramifications in China and other parts of the world. That regardless of what Abe tries to do, there is still yen strength. With specifically looking at dollar yen. Pretty much all of last year, I was kind of bleating about the kind of the 118.50 handle had acted as some real strong support. Okay,
Yes, here
and
we
I
are.
noticed even today, we're down to what's that about 118.70, 118.60. So my own view is as long as 118.50 holds, okay, that there is still some dollar strength, but if my own view is, if that 118.50 handle level starts to break and we start to see closes beneath it on the weekly, then I'm looking at, as you say, a move down towards a sub like 116 would be the next would be the next move down to maybe 115.80, 115.70. That's what I'd be looking at on there. So
Okay.
one of the
Um,
joys of the weekly chart is that these things don't happen overnight. You get time to actually build a plan, to build a tactical trading plan, and to be able to follow it through without having to, you know,
well,
um,
you're a military guy. It takes time to turn a battleship around, doesn't it?
it does, and I call for some of the guys I work, I call it like turning the super tanker because it doesn't turn on a sixpence. It takes a bit of time,
Right.
but once that super tank is going in the right direction, well then you don't want to get you don't want to get crushed by it. So it's these things they don't turn around on a sixpence, and but one but you'd be a fool to try and get in front of one once it's going along at full steam. So yeah, so
Okay,
the
so
thing.
go ahead.
I was just going to say, the thing I've seen, if you look across any of those dollar yen, Swiss yen, Aussie yen, Kiwi yen, is that pound yen, euro yen, there has been some real yen strength come in over the last month. That's something I'm keen to keep an eye on for the start of 2016.
Okay, so perhaps we've hit on one theme. A possible theme could be a shift in trend in U.S. dollar yen, causation being continued devaluation of the yuan, which outweighs anything the BOJ can do.
Yeah, that's yeah, you sum it up better than I could, Dale. So
Okay.
yeah,
All
so
right.
yeah,
So
yen's
the
good.
other, let's maybe take a look at the commodity currencies. That's something else I
Sure.
pointed out, Paul, that you pointed out you had a great year being bearish commodity currencies. And one thing I've noticed though is that with the dollar making new highs successively, just like the yen couldn't make new highs, the Aussie hasn't made a new low in quite some time. Is there any kind of shift that might be
Absolutely.
at hand in the commodity currency?
Of the ones that we're talking about, those commodity currencies, the one I particularly like is Kiwi dollar, okay, which I just hopefully is just up there,
Yes, we got it.
and you can see the people now and
Yeah,
such. So
it's been
um,
acting better than the Aussie when you consider their. I call them cousins, right?
very much so.
Um, yeah, so people trade the Aussie against the Kiwi, and Aussie Kiwi's been under pressure, which
It
says that
has
the
indeed.
Kiwi has been demonstrating relative strength. So, does that mean that we'll be paying more for milk?
Well, you talk about a very interesting subject. So I've just drawn a little green rectangle there on when last summer, pretty much, Kiwi just it was only going in one direction, and the whole idea was to basically get on board and just sell that because effectively what we had was dollar strength, Kiwi weakness. Okay, and as I
Right.
said, buy strength, sell weakness. But then what we've actually seen this is the weekly chart for the remainder of the year, and this is a little bit of a hobby horse of mine, Dale. So it is that we've seen the effect of what QE has happened over the last few years, but what I've actually been saying is that I personally believe that maybe the relaxation in the Chinese one-child policy will do more to stimulate global growth than any amount of QE. And
Interesting.
the reason is that that one child policy, and they say their estimates is that the Chinese population is 400 million people smaller because of that one child policy. And if you think of that 400 million, I mean that's like that's bigger than the entire population of the United States, isn't it? If I
Yeah.
recall.
Yeah.
And what we had was a couple of years ago, China had a huge milk scandal. Okay, the baby milk was there was all sorts of shenanigans going on, and so they basically had to China had to go overseas and import milk, and three of the places that actually they imported that milk from was Australia, Ireland, and also New Zealand. And in particular, New Zealand benefited hugely from
Oh, wasn't that the case that they found Qingdao beer in the baby formula? I really like
it.
that
I
beer.
wish.
That beer goes very well with hot and sour soup, buddy. And
It
getting
does indeed.
getting back to this one-child policy, and
Hmm.
now they could have two. The other
Yeah,
problem is that Chinese men can't find brides because the aborted child was always the female,
e-
because the
exactly.
males could help support the family. So there are a lot of male Chinese that aren't going to be able to contribute to demographic improvement. Won't this take a generation or so before it starts to have some effect on the demographics?
I think you're right. I think what's as I think probably my view that Kiwi dollar and perhaps Aussie dollar strength off the back of that. I probably picked the right theme, but I'm probably 20 years too early for the trade. However, I just what I was looking at and very simple patterns was on the weekly chart. I saw this as a kind of an inverse head and shoulders
Yeah,
starting to slowly be created, and I'd be looking to see whether that would follow through. And one of the things I've noticed over the across my what I call my STAM dashboard is that there is a starting to an edge of Kiwi strength starting to just edge back in across the whole board. So that's another thing. If I'm starting to see strength edging across the board, and I'm also starting to see a big pattern on a weekly chart. It's a bit of a scruffy inverse head and shoulders, but when I start to see these things start to play out, it's like trying to think of the right. It's like a confluence of events. It's like 3 or 4 things all coming together at one time and place, and that's when I start to get interested there.
That's a great look. I'd like to ask you, Paul, because I know I'm not even in the military, but I watch the military station again. I was one of those guys that celebrated having a high lottery number so I didn't have to go to Vietnam with my generation.
Yeah.
I really didn't want to go. I was in the dorm, and I think we had a keg party that night. So I know that you keep your eye on what's happening geopolitically here, and I know we're having this severed of the ties between the Shiite and Sunni population that's proxied by Saudi and Iran. But what worries me even more than the Middle East is what's happening in the South China Sea and the fact that the U.S. keeps sending its Navy and Air Force over the islands. And then when you bring up the demographics in China, they certainly have a lot of culling that they could do of the male population, and there's nothing better than a hot war to shave off the population. When you look around the globe, what keeps you up at night in the New World Disorder?
That's we could spend the rest of the week discussing that, but what I'd probably look at is that in terms of that South China Sea, the thing that kind of interests me is that there is a good deal of historical enmity between China and Japan. Okay, going back to the 30s and the.
Oh my God! I wouldn't want to be Japanese now that they're on the ascension. They have long memories. In fact, I mentioned that to Martin Armstrong, and he said when he was in Shanghai, he asked if there was a Japanese restaurant around anywhere, and everyone gave him a dirty look. The only Japanese restaurant was in an alley. So you're right. People don't forget what happened 60, 70 years ago.
The thing is, the US and the UK, we tend to work on 5-year. We tend to work on a 5-year memory based, driven by the political, by the way our political system works. Whereas China will happily think in terms of 25, 50, 100 years. So they're very happy to take that long-term view.
Yeah. So their foreign policy is a monthly chart. And our foreign policy is a 1-hour time frame.
In trading terms, that's actually a very good way. In trading terms, that's a really good way to describe it, Dale. That's that whole area is heating up. Okay, as they start to as a kind of clamour for resources in that area happens, I think you'll have to remind me. I think the U.S. Navy's third fleet is based in the Malacca Straits. And the reason for that is to basically I think something like 80 to 90% of China's oil comes through the Malacca Straits. So if there's ever a problem, the first thing the U.S. Navy are going to do is they're going to close off the Malacca Straits. I think
so. That's the Strait of Hormuz in the South China Sea.
That's the way to do it. And as an old air defender, I keep an eye on those things, and it's already quite clear that the Americans, the Russians, the Japanese, the Chinese, they're all kind of bumping heads in that kind of South China Sea area. And if there's one thing I know and I've learned, I've seen, is that lots of mistakes can happen quite easily. When there are lots of guys and girls in an area with weapons, regardless of all the best checks and protocols and stuff. And
also, with this going on, we just did a $1.5 billion deal with Taiwan, which Chinese still look at Taiwan as being part of their hegemony.
They do, and if I'm honest, I think my own view today, based on what we know, is in the past, the US was always going to basically be the buffer for Taiwan, but my own view would be that China's probably nudged the US Navy away from Taiwan in terms of them being able to provide a real proper deterrent should the Chinese ever wish to, let's say, forcibly retake the Taiwan. So, but that's based on.
Okay, and what's your view on Putin's adventurism and asserting his military power, projecting its power into the Middle East, and last year into Crimea.
Yeah, I think my trade for 2015 was buy dollar ruble because of Putin had backed himself into a corner in terms of 70 to 80% of the country's tax revenues come from their sort of oil and gas exports, and with the sort of sanctions that were placed against him, and also the utter collapse in the oil prices, Putin was starting to hurt. He's been under an immense amount of let's say financial and international pain. But then on the flip side of it, he's my own view is so far he let's say he's danced around the ring a bit, and he's thrown a few jabs our way, and his moves in let's say Crimea and in Syria were which showed, let's say, the West to be a bit sort of leaden-footed. But I think probably by the end of this year coming, we'll either see them the fact that it's a paper tiger, or it'll all crumple into a little bit of a let's say a little bit of a scrap in the Middle East. That's the worst case scenario.
Okay, Iran and Syria being a proxy of both Russia and I believe China, and with what's happening between Saudi Arabia and what's happening between Iran, could this change the dynamic of the oil market? I mean, to me, the oil right now, up until last week, reminded me of the euro. You would ask people what they thought of the euro, and all you would get would be downside targets. No one even thought it could rally 100 pips, and the same thing's happening in crude oil. You're starting to hear numbers like in the 20s, and even I heard a 10 handle, and that makes markets prime for at least a rip your face off short covering rally, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the I think the oil kind of bottomed out around about 36-ish, and even Putin kind of came on with his Putin came on and did his equivalent of, let's say, this last month, and invariably what happened was that he said that the climate in Russia had been difficult because of the drop in oil price, and he didn't see oil getting back above 50.
Okay.
Part of me thinks that maybe some of the element of the let's say the kind of the Saudi and Iranian struggles that over the last couple of weeks, maybe that's to help sort of ignite some interest, or some let's say some covering and buying of oil. So
he also signed a paper that he signs every 6 years to give an assessment of threats to the Russian state, and he did lead it off with NATO becoming an existential threat to Russia. Anything behind that you see?
The thing that I don't. My longer-term view was that Europe were a bit foolish in trying to play their hand in Ukraine the way they did, and I think that my own view is Putin is. If you back Putin into a corner, he's the kind of character that it would do something stupid. That's my own view. He's got nothing to lose, has he? He's got if we completely sort of make him look foolish, then he's the kind of person that would come out swinging and start throwing about buckets of sunshine, and that's not the
even hit a button. You think if he's backed into a corner with $20 crude, he might hit a button?
Well, it might be said that his actions in Crimea are him doing that. Just acting like the spoiled child, throwing his toys out of the car and trying to just just cause trouble where there doesn't need to be. So I think we have to be very careful of the way we play that, because we saw the First World War that originated through a lot of miscalculations,
right,
and a lot of stupid mistakes which could have been avoided.
right.
And we have a terrible record of repeating ourselves when it comes to history, the human race. But the thing is, these days, we can't afford to make those kind of foolish miscalculations and stupid
Talking about
decisions because
foolish miscalculations, Paul, are you in the UK?
I am at the moment. Yeah, I
Okay.
split my time between UK
What do
and
you think?
Ireland.
What do you think about that? We finally tightened in December, and look at the what we're seeing in the markets a week or so later with the NFP coming up. Was that a miscalculation? And the second part of the question is, how does the U.S. political scene look to people overseas in the UK with guys like Trump
Yeah.
leading the way for the Republicans or the potential for another Clinton in the White House? What are people saying over there?
I suppose it's kind of well, as you know, it's all a bit correlated at the moment, isn't it? With regards to the interest rate rise at the end of last year, I think Janet she'd painted herself into a corner, and so it had to happen, regardless of what she may have thought about the particular state of the economy. I think that. I think there will be more rate rises, but I'm not convinced yet that it'll be as aggressive as maybe some of the hawks consider. I think probably Mark Carney in the Bank of England was probably breathing a sigh of relief, because I don't think he wanted to get ahead of Janet in terms of tightening. So he's probably happy with that. Although even though maybe looking at the sort of, like, if you were to look at, let's say, the FTSE and look at sterling, that may not give an indication of the strength of the UK economy. But actually, in my own view, is that the UK economy is pretty strong at the moment. The thing that's hanging over is the referendum about Brexit. That's the thing that I think will cap any kind of sterling or FTSE moves this year. With regards to the US election later this year, it's it's fascinating. It's fascinating to see what appears to be like the kind of Republican Party tearing itself asunder in terms of the way they're going behind and going around choosing their nomination. It's
Yeah, it kind of fits with a global trend that, Shakespeare said, when the coffers are full, people cry out for democracy, and when they're empty, they cry out for a dictator. I mean, you're seeing that in France after the attacks, Le Pen doing well. You're seeing right-wing nationalistic policies in Eastern Europe and Poland, all over the place. So to me, this kind of looks like a repeat of the 30s, doesn't it?
I would I would agree with you entirely, Dale. It's the last couple of years have been very, very strange in terms of the way things are played out. That we had that financial crash 2007, 2008. In some respects, we're maybe only seeing the consequences of it now in terms of the way the sort of political hierarchy around the world has changed and moved. It's I think that in terms of the US, it's I don't know. When the world has such, let's say, uncertainty and such opportunity for, let's say, misadventure and trouble, the world still looks to the US to set the tone and to lead the world. And I think maybe in terms of what's been the way it's conducting itself, the kind of political shenanigans at the moment, I don't think it does itself any favors. That's the thing. The world is looking for some really good, sound, solid moral leadership, and it's maybe sad to see the kind of the way it's been conducted so far. But that's, I'm an outsider, so it's an outsider's view, isn't it? It's
okay. Well, that's what I was interested in. I'm also interested in, and I'm sure others are, Paul, after hearing you. And thanks for your great looks on U.S. dollar yen and the Kiwi, and that you write things down. What's the best way, besides your Twitter handle, of people being able to follow you? I know that the Trading Beliefs, I believe, is your website. Is that correct? Tradingbeliefs.com.
That's an old website. Probably the best thing is my blog, and that's the same as my Twitter handle. So that's fxtraderpaul.com. So
Okay.
and there I pretty much blog about my views of the markets in the world. Sometimes it's insightful. Sometimes it's just an grumpy old man ranting. It depends upon your point of view, I suppose. But fxtraderpaul.com is probably the best blog. It's my blog, and that's the best thing to. As I put most of my trade views, my trade ideas, and also just a little bit of my own kind of view of what's going on.
You also have a course, don't you? You teach and mentor.
I do a little bit of mentorship. The kind of I'm combining that into a what's called the Veterans Trader Project, and so I am kind of a very simple course that was basically to help veterans leaving the military to give them let's say a shot at being a trader in the same way that I did, and I had to do it all the hard way, off my own back. But the interesting thing is that what was discovered was that the kind of three things that keep coming up in terms of good traders, namely process, discipline, and self-awareness, and so anybody can do with learning and developing that, not necessarily just veterans, and that's kind of what I focus on. They've been able to put in have the process, the discipline, the self-awareness to improve constantly as a trader, because it doesn't matter whether you're a 2-week or 2-decade veteran of the markets. That's something that which should be just your natural way of operating in financial markets.
Well, thank you, Paul, so much for an insightful conversation. I hope all your trades end up with safe landings and that you know how to hit the ejector in time to land safely with your chute. I hope you didn't mind all my Air Force type metaphors and analogs today. And, I had a great time talking to you, Paul. I hope we could do it again down the road.
Absolutely, the pleasure's all mine, Dale, and I wish you and all of the the listeners that I wish them every success in their own endeavors in the financial markets. So I hope that all their trades have a healthy reward to risk.